Okay, the next item of business is the statement by COCAB Stewart on One Scotland, Many Voices, a Shared Future. The Minister will take questions at the end of her statement, therefore there should be no interventions or interruptions. I call on the Minister. Up to 10 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. At a time when hostile rhetoric is creating real fear and uncertainty, it is vital that we recognise the impact this is having on communities across the country. When people feel excluded or marginalised, communities suffer. Tensions rise, trust erodes, and we begin to see the normalisation of resentment, division and the entrenchment of othering, where we see communities excluded and alienated. The effects of this are direct and lasting. They echo through families, schools, workplaces and the everyday interactions that define our shared lives. The shared bonds that hold communities together begin to fray. If targeting of minorities goes unchallenged, we undermine our values and Scotland's hard-earned international reputation as a welcoming country, known for understanding the desperate situation that those fleeing conflict and persecution are in, and responding with compassion and kindness. Over the past fortnight, we have welcomed 6 families from Gaza who have arrived with children in need of urgent medical care. This is part of the First Minister's commitment that Scotland will treat up to 20 child patients from Gaza. This government has always taken seriously our responsibility to promote safe and connected communities, and we will continue to work together with partners and local authorities to ensure that all communities have the means to contribute, to feel safe and have a sense of belonging in Scotland. Because looking out for one another is not just a policy goal, it's not an optional or idealistic, it is part of the fabric of our lives in this country. We value diversity, not just as a principle, but as a strength that enriches our society and our economy. Presiding Officer, as a country, Scotland has real and pressing demographic needs. We need inward migration to support our communities, our public services and our economy. That's why we have consistently called for the creation of regular, safe and accessible visa routes that reflect Scotland's needs. Routes that allow people to come here not only to work, but to settle and to contribute to our society. We completely reject the disgraceful comments earlier this week from Nigel Farage, who set out desperate and despicable plans for mass deportations, callously, blatantly blaming migrants for the economic state of broken Britain. Farage's plans would threaten a collapse of our NHS and crash the economy all over again. We don't accept it. And to be clear, he should be ashamed of such blatant demonisation. This government...
There should be no interruptions or interventions. Minister.
Thank you. This government has made detailed, constructive proposals to the UK government on safe and accessible visa routes. Unfortunately, the response has so far been disappointing. Once again, the immigration system we are tied to does not reflect Scotland's interests or our values. However, the UK Government's approach has not deterred us from doing what we can within our powers. On migration, we have established Scotland's Migration Service to support employers, investors and individuals to navigate the UK immigration system. And our New Scots strategy sets out a clear and integrated approach to supporting refugees and people seeking asylum from day one of arrival. It is a model of partnership embedded at local level between national and local government, third sector organisations and communities themselves. This is an approach commended by the UNHCR High Commissioner when he visited Scotland earlier this year. Last month, I experienced the excellent community development and refugee integration work taking place across Perth and Kinross. This work brings communities together through community cafes, shared passions such as football. And I also learned of the support given by Perth and Kinross Council to young people seeking asylum, helping them to understand and access the support that they are entitled to. delivering local orientation, English classes, and supporting young people to integrate into the local community through volunteering opportunities and sport. This work has seen Perth and Kinross Council being awarded Council of Sanctuary in October 2024, one of the many places in Scotland that are recognised for their efforts in welcoming people seeking sanctuary. Our shared aim is clear: to ensure that all new Scots have the opportunity to rebuild their lives here and to feel part of our nation. This approach doesn't just support individuals, it strengthens the communities they become part of. The Scottish Government remains dedicated to a path rooted in the power of community and committed to dignity and inclusion. In tough times, we should not turn against our neighbours, we turn towards each other. It is not acceptable to vilify and exclude communities. We must never allow fear to erode our humanity, nor the reputation Scotland has as a proud home to many different communities living side by side. My commitment to this is not just rhetorical, it is practical, visible and ongoing. I am fortunate to have seen first-hand the good and collaborative efforts of communities across Scotland to ensure Scotland is a place where everyone belongs and feels safe. Just recently, I was honoured to attend the Pitch to Plate multicultural meal at Hibernian Football Club, an example of how faith and sport can come together to build community. This monthly event, led by the Scottish Ahul Baith Society and the Hibernian Community Foundation, brings together new Scots, refugees and those facing hardship to share a warm meal and meaningful connection. On Tuesday morning this week, I visited the Maryhill Integration Network, who support integration in communities, providing space for people to come together through music, art, gardening and language classes. This organisation and many others like them are all doing vital work in their local areas to support integration, build community support and bring people together through community projects. They engage locally to help share factual information and build awareness and understanding through training sessions. They are also focused on new challenges which have developed in recent years, where misinformation is being shared online with significant impact on individuals and communities. In discussions with the team at Maryhill, it was clear that their staff and the people they serve are being directly impacted by the climate of fear that has been building. This is simply unacceptable and goes against everything that Scotland stands for. Strong communities don't happen by accident. We must never take them for granted. There is no room for complacency. All this work shows the impact of community-led support that brings people together across cultures, faiths and experiences. These are spaces where shared values thrive: compassion, solidarity and mutual respect. These are the stories of success that rarely make the headlines, but they are the stories that shape a better future. Building and nurturing cohesion requires investment in services, in support and, most of all, in people. We will continue to support and fund organisations embedded in communities across Scotland, organisations that know their people, understand their challenges and work every day the length and breadth of Scotland to respond, adapt and engage in ways that bring people together and challenge exclusion. We recognise too that challenges remain. We are committed to addressing the shared issues and challenges felt by many and to fostering a sense of collective belonging and purpose. In line with the themes discussed at the First Minister's gathering in April, we have been actively listening and engaging with communities. As a result, we are working closely with partners to refocus our efforts towards building meaningful links between communities, broadening our approach to cohesion and ensuring it reflects the diverse realities that strengthens Scotland today. That is why today I am pleased to announce further funding of £300,000 this year, in addition to the £7.9 million for 25-26 that my portfolio already provides to support organisations working across Scotland to support community cohesion. This additional funding is intended to support organisations, activities and initiatives that bring local communities together to address shared issues and counter division. My intention is to support work that builds connections across different communities and fosters greater understanding, meaningful dialogue and intercultural activities to enhance mutual respect and understanding at a local level. The aim is to strengthen the social fabric and contribute to common goals such as promoting collective well-being, bridging divides and countering misinformation. By focusing on what unites us, this funding seeks to benefit all communities and help heal divisions through inclusive, collaborative action. We cannot and will not allow division and hostility to define us. I am determined to work with our partners to build and support the excellent work of local community organisations and projects that bring people together to build the strong, resilient and connected communities across Scotland that we all want to see. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Minister. The Minister will now take questions on the issues raised in her statement. I have planned to allow around 20 minutes for that, after which we'll need to move on to the next item of business. Grateful if members who wish to ask a question, who haven't already done so, could press the request to speak buttons. And I call first Alexander Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I thank the Minister for prior sight of the statement. In the statement, the Scottish Government indicates that it has always taken seriously the responsibilities to promote safe and connected communities, and that it will continue to support and fund organisations embedded in communities across Scotland and engage in ways that bring people together. Whilst the additional funding announcement is welcome, local authorities are facing financial constraints dealing with the influx of individuals. Therefore, what measures will the Scottish Government put in place to support local authorities? What discussion have the Scottish Government had with the UK Government about dealing with the number of refugees and asylum seekers? And what is the Scottish Government's long-term approach in dealing with the number of refugees and asylum seekers, given any possible impact on local services?
Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Thank you for your questions. I will do my best to pick up as many as I can. I would like to reinforce that this Government will talk about neighbours, we will talk about human beings and take a human rights embedded approach, and therefore our focus is not on numbers, it is making sure that we fulfil the needs of Scotland. We totally understand the pressures that are faced by a failed immigration system that is being perpetuated by decisions that are made in the UK. They have enhanced and speeded up the progress of applications, but what they have not then done is provided adequate funding to enable that move-on period. We have had negotiations with the UK Government, and as I stated in my statement, the response from them has been disappointing.
Thank you. Jackie Bailey.
Presiding Officer, let me start by welcoming the Minister's comments on the need to promote strong and resilient communities. And I too reject the hostile rhetoric of Nigel Farage and Reform, who only offer division and hatred rather than bringing people together. First issue for the Government is promoting inclusion. In 2002, Scottish Labour launched One Scotland, Many Cultures. This was a public awareness campaign to celebrate the diversity of Scotland and Scots in cinema, on television, at bus stops, at schools, right the way across the country. This challenged perceptions and promoted understanding between cultures. Will the Minister repeat a population-wide awareness campaign? And the second issue is dealing with the problems that Scots feel disappointed with every day. The lack of housing, waiting lists in the NHS, declining town centres, all the things that are the responsibility of the Scottish Government. So what will the Minister and her colleagues do to fix these services rather than have more people being attracted to the politics of division?
Minister.
Thank you. I thank Jackie Bailey's question on that, and I acknowledge that campaign, and it remains talked about with me. I can give her reassurance that throughout my portfolio I have the pleasure of many teams such as the Faith and Belief, the old people's organisations, disability networks as well, and they are all expressing to me that every aspect of our societies are are feeling this rise in this negative rhetoric. So I am listening very carefully to them, and whilst they quite rightly put the challenge on the Scottish Government to show that visible leadership and that strong, clear, consistent message of cohesion and protecting our communities, my challenge to everybody is to take their responsibilities and their roles of leadership within their organisations, or whether it be on the street, with their neighbours, in their communities, to actually make sure that we are treating people with compassion and with kindness. And that's how we can counteract it. And this funding will support those conversations around the difficulties that people are facing with the challenge of rising food costs, of food bills, and making sure that we deal with misinformation and realise that the challenges that are faced by different parts of our communities are challenges faced by all of us, and we have more in common than what separates us.
Thank you. Jackie Dunbar, to be followed by Tess White.
Thank you, President Officer. I welcome the funding announced by the Scottish Government for organisations working on community cohesion, as we know how important this work is to promoting inclusion. Can the Minister expand on the type of work that this funding will support in order to build integrated communities in Scotland?
Minister.
Thank you. I thank Jackie Dunbar for that. We want to support organisations that bring local communities together to tackle exclusion and division. And this additional funding stream is to support grassroots organisations working across shared interest areas such as sport, health, well-being and cultural activities that bring communities together to build trust and connections through meaningful dialogue and community engagement. And we want to support the activities that unite and that deliver the outcomes that can benefit everyone, regardless of background.
Tess White, to be followed by Marie McNair.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Minister, the communities in Aberdeenshire are tolerant, respectful, welcoming and understanding. However, the situation they face right now is that it was supposed to be temporary. Aberdeenshire Council is already at a disadvantage because it's the fourth lowest funded council in Scotland, and it's already making swinging cuts to its creaking services, which are already at capacity. So my question, Minister, is how much of the £7.9 million and this additional £300,000 going to Aberdeenshire Council? Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. Tess White raises the very important sort of pressures that are faced by councils. However, I think I have given in a previous question, and she will be fully aware that immigration is a wholly reserved area. Local councils do not fund hotel provisions, which are meant to be temporary, and we have repeatedly called on the UK Government to actually provide that funding directly to local authorities, who we believe are best placed to provide all the services that are required to ensure that we have full integration. Now, we have examples of that. We had the Afghan relocation scheme, we had the Syrian scheme as well. So we actually have stuff that works, and I would urge the UK Government to give serious consideration to the examples of good practice that we already have that supports our local authorities. Marie
McNair, to be followed by Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I welcome the New Scots integration strategy launched by the Scottish Government earlier last year. Can the Minister update the Scottish Government's implementation of this strategy and how it's working with COSLA and the Scottish Refugee Council to ensure the lived experience of refugees and people seeking asylum is central to its delivery?
Minister.
Thank you. The Scottish Government, as I said in my opening remarks, completely rejects the language and the proposals of Nigel Farage, who have threatened mass deportations of people who have rightfully come to the UK and established their lives, their work and their families as part of our communities. So I suppose the New Scots integration... Sorry, Presiding Officer, I've lost the thread of the question that Marie McNair asked, and I'm doing my best to answer the substance of it. Is it OK if she just repeats the question for me?
Can't go backwards, Minister, I'm afraid.
New Scots integration, thank you. Yes, the New Scots integration plan, as I said, has been widely acclaimed and acknowledged as an example of good practice. It is shared equally. We did that with third sector stakeholders and with COSLA. It is multi-portfolio and it covers all the areas such as health, transport, education, and we believe that that is an excellent example that, again, the UK Government could learn from.
Paul Sweeney to be followed by Paul McLennan.
Thank you very much, Deputy Presiding Officer. I'd like to associate myself with the sentiments in the Minister's statement, and particularly her commending of Maryhill Integration Network, who I think do excellent work in Glasgow. I think it's their AGM actually this afternoon, and they also provide the Secretariat to the Cross-Party Group on Migration, which has been a fantastic addition to the Parliament in recent years. Does she agree that fundamentally, though, this is a question of housing supply, and that we can't allow a housing crisis to translate into an issue of social cohesion, and we need to build out housing and expand a city like Glasgow? It's got plenty of latent capacity. But does she also recognise we need to have measurable outcomes from the New Scots integration strategy, particularly around skills? We've seen Ukrainians and others who've got settled status saying they're struggling to access skills-appropriate work. We've got dentists cycling around delivering Uber in Glasgow when they could be training at pace. Can we get that sorted?
Minister.
Thank you. I thank Paul Sweeney for that. He picks up many threads there. I mean, the Ukrainian resettlement scheme, of course, the big difference there was that Ukrainians had the right to work, which we have also called for. And there are big differences with, of course, sort of like asylum seekers who have no recourse to public funds. And I commend the work that he did on campaigns for securing free bus travel pilots, for instance, which we are delivering on as well. I understand the point that he's making about housing pressures. This government has declared the housing emergency, and it is investing record amounts of funding in not only bringing on new builds but also dealing with void properties and doing everything that it can. But the bigger issue here in this context is that we must not use the unhappiness that people are feeling and pitting communities against one another. We must reject that division.
Paul McLennan to be followed by Maggie Chapman.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Migration to Scotland provides substantial economic benefits by boosting labour supply, increasing productivity, filling skill shortages and raising tax revenue, which supports public services and a growing economy. It's also crucial for sustaining and growing the population, particularly addressing the projected fall in the working age population. Beyond economics, migrants enrich communities and contribute to cultural life. Does the Minister agree with me that it's a duty of all of us in this chamber to ensure that debate in this regard is balanced, compassionate and fact-based to ensure our shared future is built on coalitions of solidarity, and that faith groups, private sector, schools and civic organisations must stand together?
Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Yes, I absolutely agree that we all have a responsibility across this chamber to ensure our leadership and language is factual and respectful. Now more than ever, it is vital that we continue to stand in solidarity with all communities across Scotland against exclusion and division.
Maggie Chapman to be followed by Alex Cole-Hamilton.
I thank the Minister for her statement. I called for the statement during recess after we saw vile hate and outright fascism on our streets. Whipping up anti-migrant fear, whether by blocking family reunions or tearing families apart because of indefinite leave to remain changes, is sold as the answer to poverty, inequality and an economic system that fails too many. But it's another false solution, just like austerity and Brexit, pushed by politicians and the media and left unchallenged by a weak UK government drifting to the right. Can the Minister be more specific about how we can ensure those seeking asylum being accommodated in Scotland feel welcomed and supported, despite the demonisation they face by the UK Government and too many others?
Minister.
Thank you for that question. I am hopeful, and I am absolutely convinced that the work that we have already done on building our cohesive communities, they have been hard won and hard fought for, and this government will do everything it can to make sure that we protect our cohesive communities and reject any kind of negative narrative. Communities are our ally, and of course working in partnership with our delivery partners and communities is core to the approach that we have already taken, and it will underpin how we are going to use this additional money to support work amongst all of our communities so that they can come together and be connected. Our approach to cohesion is built on that solid foundation of equality, inclusion and human rights.
Thank you. Alex Cole-Hamilton, to be followed by Gordon MacDonald.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I remind the Chamber of my register of interest, having been a host for Ukraine under the Homes for Ukraine scheme for 9 months. I welcome the tone of the Minister's statement, particularly her remarks around the fact that we have a proud tradition of offering safe harbour to people through the asylum system. Does she recognise, though, there is a crisis in asylum backlog in terms of processing, caused in large part by the last Conservative government deliberately? And does she agree with Liberal Democrat plans to activate the Civil Contingencies Act so that we can double the number of caseworkers processing asylum claims, that we can stand up Nightingale-style processing centres so that we can clear down these claims in just 6 months?
Minister.
I thank Alex Cole-Hamilton for the question and for taking the opportunity to highlight one of their policy areas. The UK Immigration White Paper, that set out policy intentions which aim to reduce the levels of net migration to the UK. But in Scotland, our demographic evidence makes it clear that Scotland's population growth and its working age population growth relies wholly on sustained positive net migration to Scotland continuing. So the UK immigration system is focused on sectoral approaches, but we have argued for visa routes which are differentiated by geography rather than sector or work status, such as the rural visa pilot or the Scottish visa. So whilst our Scottish graduate visa proposal looked to extend the duration of the visa for 2 or 3 years for graduates in Scotland, the UK government opted to reduce it. And in a similar vein, we have also argued for the move-on period to be 56 days as a matter of permanency, and they have gone for 28 days. So any measures that actually, get people through a system and it fits the needs of Scotland, sound good.
Thank you. Gordon MacDonald, to be followed by Megan Gallagher.
I thank the Minister for her statement. The ONS Labour Force Survey indicates that there are 63,000 unfilled vacancies in Scotland, particularly in health and social care and in the hospitality sector. With Scottish unemployment lower than the UK, coupled with an ageing population, what steps are the Scottish Government taking to welcome people from other countries who decide to make Scotland their home, and how would a separate Scottish immigration system address these issues and support our economy and our population's health and well-being?
Minister.
Thank you. Population figures consistently show that Scotland's population and its working age population, as I said, is growing only because of positive net migration. And the move to end international recruitment of care workers will be devastating for the care sector in Scotland and across the UK. Scotland needs talented and committed people from across the world to be able to work here across all sectors of the community without excessive barriers. The UK Government's White Paper, that proposed changes to the immigration system that will only make it harder. Migration policy should be supporting mobility, collaboration, innovation, and must suitably reflect the skills requirements of all of the UK. Now, we require a tailored approach to migration to meet our distinct challenges, and I call on the UK Government to work with us to deliver that.
Megan Gallagher, to be followed by Rona Mackay.
Thank you, Presiding Officers. When the Scottish Conservatives brought a debate around hotels and housing asylum seekers, I said that discussions around illegal immigration, no matter how difficult, are important. I also raised the horrific attack in my own region of a 15-year-old girl in Falkirk who was raped by an asylum seeker who entered the UK illegally. Distrust in politicians, both locally and nationally, is rising, because they are choosing not to listen to the valid concerns of communities. And the statement today does not address the questions in relation to pressures on public services, which fuels the division in our communities. So, Minister, I do have to ask you, what is your response to my constituents who are concerned by what happens in their community.
Through the Chair,
what additional
Minister.
protections?
Thank you, Presiding Officer. As I have already stated, I think we all have a responsibility in this chamber to ensure that we use our leadership and our language very, very carefully and respectfully. Now, I absolutely understand, and I think Megan Gallagher has raised that before, and I responded to it, and I accepted that that is an appalling situation. And at this moment, I would also like to share stories of Pakistani young girls that are getting attacked and racial abuse on their way to school. We have old-age pensioners that are now too frightened to go out from various communities. So I think that this is something that, we need to be very careful, again, about not pitting communities against one another, but using our platforms to bring people together.
And briefly, Rona Mackay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. So, as the Minister said, in recent months we've witnessed a deeply concerning rise in levels of divisive anti-migration rhetoric across the UK, and largely driven by misinformation. The spread of this rhetoric is isolating and stigmatises vulnerable people who've come here in search of safety. What assurances can the Minister provide that Scotland continues to be a welcoming nation for asylum seekers, and can she outline how the Scottish Government is working to counter this dreadful misinformation?
As briefly as possible, Minister.
Thank you. We are working with our partners, including Scottish Refugee Council, local authorities and other third sector partners, to challenge this increasingly stigmatising narrative and to find ways for communities to come together with respectful dialogue and shared understanding. We're also working with the Home Office to tackle the sources of misinformation and disinformation that perpetuate harmful narratives. And just to briefly finish, I would like to take the opportunity, Presiding Officer, to point out that we must not, unfortunately, the human condition, and none of us are perfect, and some go into criminality. Now, what we must not do is to divide them or target them and blame entire communities for the actions of a few.
Thank you. That concludes this item of business. There will be a brief pause before we move to the next item of business to allow front benches to change.